4 brothers, same parents, same home, same DNA, but 4 completely different blood types. Science said it was impossible. The medical community called it a hoax, and when researchers finally got permission to study them, they discovered something that would challenge everything we thought we knew about human biology. This is the story that modern science still refuses to fully explain. Before we unlock this case, make sure to subscribe to True Crime Vault and hit that notification bell. We investigate the mysteries that deserve to be remembered, from unsolved disappearances to the unexplained phenomena that defy logic. New cases every week. In the spring of 1952, a small rural hospital in County Cork, Ireland, became the center of one of the most baffling medical mysteries of the 20th century. Dr. Margaret Fitzgerald, a general practitioner who had been working in the region for nearly 2 decades, was conducting routine blood type screenings for 4 brothers from the Murphy family. It was standard procedure, nothing special, just another day of paperwork and basic medical assessments. But what she discovered in those blood samples would haunt the medical community for generations. The Murphy brothers, ranging in age from 7 to 15, were the sons of Thomas and Catherine Murphy, a farming couple who had lived in the same cottage for their entire marriage. According to medical records obtained from the Cork Regional Hospital archives, the family had no history of genetic abnormalities, no unusual health conditions, and no reason to suspect anything extraordinary about their biology. They were, by all accounts, a perfectly ordinary Irish family. Dr. Fitzgerald drew blood from each of the 4 boys during a routine school health screening. The samples were labeled, cataloged, and sent to the hospital laboratory for standard blood typing. 24 hours later, she received a phone call that would change her career forever. The laboratory supervisor told her there had been a mistake. The samples must have been contaminated or mislabeled. It wasn't possible for the results to be accurate. The 4 Murphy brothers, all born to the same biological parents, showed 4 completely different blood types. The eldest, Patrick, tested as type A. The second son, Michael, was type B. The third brother, Sean, showed type AB, and the youngest, Liam, tested as type O. In standard human genetics, this outcome is considered impossible. Let me explain why this finding sent shockwaves through the medical community. Human blood types are determined by genetics, specifically by genes inherited from both parents. The ABO blood group system follows predictable patterns of inheritance. If both parents are type O, all their children must be type O. If one parent is type A and the other is type O, their children can only be type A or type O. The appearance of 4 different blood types in siblings from the same parents violated every known principle of Mendelian genetics. Dr. Fitzgerald insisted on retesting. The blood samples were drawn again, this time under strict laboratory conditions with multiple witnesses present. The hospital's chief pathologist personally supervised the collection and analysis. 3 separate laboratories in Dublin, London, and Edinburgh were sent blind samples without any identifying information. Every single test came back with the same impossible results. Patrick was type A, Michael was type B, Sean was type AB, Liam was type O. According to Dr. Fitzgerald's notes, which were later published in a limited circulation medical journal in 1953, the parents were also tested. Thomas Murphy was confirmed as type A. Catherine Murphy tested as type B. Under normal genetic circumstances, their children could only be type A, type B, or type AB. The presence of a type O child, Liam, was already anomalous. But having all 4 blood types represented in one family, the odds weren't just unlikely. They were mathematically impossible according to known genetic science. The medical community's response was swift and dismissive. Leading geneticists from Trinity College Dublin declared the findings must be the result of laboratory error. Others suggested fraud or deliberate contamination of samples. A few proposed that one or more of the children might not be biological siblings. Despite the parents' insistence and the obvious family resemblance among all 4 boys, parish records confirmed all 4 births, with the same parents listed on each certificate, and local witnesses who had known the family for years attested to Catherine Murphy's pregnancies and the births of all 4 sons. What happened next is where this case takes an even stranger turn. In late 1953, a team of researchers from the Royal College of Physicians in London requested permission to conduct a comprehensive genetic study of the Murphy family. They wanted to take detailed blood samples, tissue samples, and conduct what were then cutting-edge genetic analyses. They offered to cover all expenses and even provide compensation to the family for their participation. The Murphy family, who had become increasingly uncomfortable with the attention and speculation surrounding their sons, initially agreed. The research team arrived in Cork in January 1954. According to correspondence preserved in the Royal College archives, they spent 3 days setting up their equipment in a local medical facility. They had arranged for specialized testing equipment to be shipped from London. They had secured funding from 2 major universities. Everything was in place for what they believed would be a groundbreaking study in human genetics. And then, 48 hours before the study was scheduled to begin, the Murphy family withdrew their consent. Thomas Murphy appeared at the medical facility and informed the researchers that his family would no longer participate. No explanation was given. No amount of persuasion could change his mind. The family refused all further contact with medical researchers, journalists, or anyone else interested in their unusual genetic profile. Multiple attempts were made over the following years to convince the family to reconsider. In 1957, a prominent American geneticist traveled to Ireland specifically to meet with them. In 1962, a documentary filmmaker sought permission to tell their story. In 1968, a research team from Harvard Medical School offered what was described as substantial financial compensation for just one more series of tests. Every request was denied. The Murphy family had effectively sealed themselves off from scientific inquiry. But the story doesn't end there, because while the family refused to cooperate with official research, information about the 4 brothers continued to leak into the medical community through unofficial channels. Dr. Fitzgerald, who remained the family's physician until her retirement in 1971, kept detailed private notes about the boys' health and development. These notes, discovered after her death in 1982, provide tantalizing clues about what might have made the Murphy brothers so unique. According to Dr. Fitzgerald's observations, all 4 brothers demonstrated unusual resistance to certain infectious diseases that were common in rural Ireland during the 1950s. During a severe influenza outbreak in 1956 that affected nearly 60% of the local population, none of the Murphy brothers showed symptoms despite documented exposure. In 1959, when 3 of the brothers were exposed to measles, they developed only mild symptoms that resolved in half the normal time. Most remarkably, during a bacterial meningitis outbreak in 1961 that resulted in several deaths in the region, the Murphy brothers remained completely unaffected, despite one of them having close contact with an infected classmate. Dr. Fitzgerald speculated in her private notes that the boys' unusual genetic makeup might have conferred some form of enhanced immune function. She wrote that their ability to resist infection seemed to exceed what would be expected even for healthy children with robust immune systems. She documented their recovery times from minor injuries and illnesses and noted that they consistently healed faster than her other patients. But without the ability to conduct controlled studies or detailed genetic analysis, her observations remained purely anecdotal. The medical community's interest in the Murphy case gradually faded as the decades passed. Without access to the family for further study, and with no similar cases reported anywhere else in the world, most geneticists concluded that the original blood typing results must have been erroneous despite the multiple confirmatory tests. The case was occasionally mentioned in textbooks as an example of the importance of proper laboratory technique and the dangers of contamination, but the possibility that the results were genuine was largely dismissed. Then, in 1989, something unexpected happened. Patrick Murphy, the eldest brother, now 52 years old, was involved in a serious automobile accident in Dublin. He required emergency surgery and multiple blood transfusions. Hospital records from St. James's Hospital confirm that his blood type was tested as part of the emergency protocol. The result? Type A. Exactly as it had been tested 37 years earlier. This single confirmation reignited interest in the case. If Patrick's blood type had remained consistent across nearly 4 decades, it suggested that the original tests had not been contaminated or erroneous. Medical researchers began searching for the other brothers, hoping to verify their blood types as well. But by this time, the family had scattered. Michael had emigrated to the United States in the 1960s. Sean had moved to Australia. Liam, the youngest, had remained in Ireland but had become increasingly reclusive and refused all contact with outsiders. A research team from Trinity College Dublin managed to track down Michael Murphy in Boston in 1991. With his permission, they conducted a comprehensive blood analysis. The result confirmed what the childhood tests had shown. Michael was type B. The researchers published their findings in a peer-reviewed genetics journal, carefully noting that they had now confirmed 2 of the 4 brothers' blood types across a span of 40 years. They argued that the consistency of these results across time strongly suggested the original 1952 findings were accurate. But here's where the story takes its most frustrating turn. Despite this compelling evidence, the scientific community remained divided. Some researchers argued that with only 2 of the 4 brothers confirmed, the case remained incomplete. Others suggested that perhaps the blood typing methods used in the 1950s were flawed in ways that consistently produced the same errors. A few geneticists proposed theoretical mechanisms by which the Murphy brothers' genetic profile might be possible, involving rare mutations or chimerism, where an individual possesses cells from 2 different genetic lineages. But without access to all 4 brothers for comprehensive genetic testing, these theories remained unproven. The Murphy family's refusal to cooperate became the subject of considerable speculation. Some suggested they feared becoming medical curiosities or laboratory subjects. Others proposed they had been advised by religious authorities to avoid further testing. A few conspiracy theorists even suggested the family was hiding something more significant about their genetic makeup, perhaps related to government experiments or undisclosed medical interventions. But the most likely explanation, according to those who knew the family, was simply that they wanted to live normal lives without the constant scrutiny and attention their genetic anomaly attracted. In 1998, a journalist from the Irish Times managed to secure a brief interview with Liam Murphy, the youngest brother. It was the first time any member of the family had spoken publicly about their case in over 40 years. Liam, who was then 53 years old, was asked why the family had refused to cooperate with medical research. His answer was both simple and profound. He said they were not laboratory animals. They were people. They had the right to live their lives without being studied, tested, and analyzed. He said the attention had made their childhood difficult, had led to bullying at school, and had caused their parents considerable stress. He expressed no regret about the family's decision to withdraw from the planned 1954 study. When asked if he believed his family's genetic profile had given them any special abilities, Liam laughed and said they were just ordinary people who happened to have unusual blood types. He acknowledged that they had generally enjoyed good health, but attributed that to lifestyle factors rather than genetics. He confirmed that he had remained type O throughout his life, having been tested multiple times for various medical procedures. And when asked if he would be willing to participate in genetic research now, decades after the original controversy, he politely but firmly declined. The interview ended shortly after, and Liam Murphy returned to his private life. Sean Murphy, the 3rd brother, died in Australia in 2003 at the age of 61. According to his death certificate and medical records obtained by researchers after his passing, he had maintained type AB blood throughout his life. This was confirmed by multiple transfusion records from surgeries he had undergone in his later years. His death was attributed to complications from diabetes, and autopsy reports showed no unusual genetic abnormalities beyond his blood type profile. Patrick Murphy passed away in 2011 at the age of 74. Michael Murphy died in 2015 at 76. Both men's medical records continued to show the same blood types they had been assigned as children. Patrick remained type A. Michael remained type B. No comprehensive genetic study was ever conducted on any of the brothers during their lifetimes, despite repeated requests from the scientific community. Liam Murphy, the youngest brother and the last surviving member of the family, is now 82 years old. As of the latest information available, he continues to live in Ireland and maintains his refusal to participate in genetic research. Multiple research institutions have reached out to him over the past decade, particularly as advances in genetic sequencing technology have made it possible to conduct far more detailed analyses than were available in the 1950s. All requests have been declined. The scientific community remains divided on how to interpret the Murphy case. Some geneticists maintain that the blood typing results must have been the result of systematic error, despite the consistency of the findings across 7 decades and multiple independent tests. They argue that the genetic mechanism required to produce 4 different blood types in siblings from the same parents is not just rare, but impossible, according to current understanding of human genetics. Others propose that the Murphy brothers represent an undocumented genetic phenomenon that challenges our assumptions about inheritance patterns. Several theories have been advanced to explain their blood types. One suggestion is that one or both parents possessed a form of genetic mosaicism, where different cells in their bodies carried different genetic information. This could theoretically have resulted in different genetic contributions to each offspring. Another theory proposes that the brothers experienced somatic mutations early in development that altered their blood type genes, though this would be unprecedented and would not fully explain the pattern observed. A more controversial theory suggests that the Murphy case represents evidence of human chimerism, a condition where an individual possesses cells from two different genetic sources. This can occur when fraternal twin embryos fuse in the womb, resulting in a single individual with two distinct genetic profiles. If both Murphy parents were chimeric, the theory goes, it might be possible for their children to inherit different combinations of genetic material in ways that could produce 4 different blood types. However, no evidence of chimerism was ever detected in the parents during their lifetimes, and this explanation remains highly speculative. The most recent attempt to study the Murphy case came in 2019, when a team of geneticists from Johns Hopkins University published a comprehensive review of all available documentation related to the family. They analyzed Dr. Fitzgerald's original notes, hospital records, laboratory reports, and correspondence from the various research attempts over the decades. Their conclusion was that the blood typing results appear to be legitimate and consistent, but that without direct genetic analysis of family members, particularly Liam Murphy, it is impossible to determine the underlying mechanism responsible for the unusual inheritance pattern. The Johns Hopkins team made a public appeal to Liam Murphy to reconsider his refusal to participate in genetic testing. They emphasized that modern techniques are minimally invasive and that the knowledge gained could potentially advance our understanding of human genetics in ways that might benefit medical science. They offered complete confidentiality, financial compensation, and the guarantee that only de-identified data would be published. To date, they have received no response. What makes the Murphy case particularly frustrating for the scientific community is that it represents a genuine anomaly that appears to be well documented but remains unstudied. In an age where we can sequence entire genomes, map genetic mutations, and understand inheritance patterns with remarkable precision, we have a family whose genetic profile seems to violate basic principles of heredity, and yet we cannot study them. The knowledge that could potentially revolutionize our understanding of human genetics remains locked away, protected by one family's decision to maintain their privacy. Some ethicists have argued that in cases of such profound scientific importance, there should be mechanisms to compel participation in research studies. Others vehemently defend the Murphy family's right to refuse, emphasizing that bodily autonomy and consent are fundamental principles that cannot be overridden, regardless of the potential scientific value. The debate reflects broader tensions in medical ethics between the pursuit of knowledge and the rights of individuals to control their own bodies and genetic information. The Murphy case has also become a focal point for discussions about medical privacy and the limits of scientific inquiry. In an era where genetic testing is increasingly common, and where companies offer to sequence your genome for a few $100s, the Murphy family's steadfast refusal to be studied represents a form of resistance to the assumption that scientific knowledge always takes precedence over personal autonomy. Whether you view their decision as admirable or frustrating depends largely on where you stand on questions of individual rights versus collective benefit. From a purely scientific perspective, the Murphy brothers represent one of the most tantalizing unsolved mysteries in human genetics. If their blood typing results are accurate and not the result of some form of laboratory error, which 7 decades of consistent findings suggest they are, then they challenge our fundamental understanding of how genetic traits are inherited. The fact that we may never know the answer, that this mystery may die with Liam Murphy, is both profoundly frustrating and, in its own way, deeply human. Because ultimately, the Murphy case is not just a story about blood types and genetics. It's a story about a family that found themselves at the center of a scientific controversy through no fault of their own. It's about children who were bullied and scrutinized because they were different. It's about parents who made the decision to protect their son's privacy and normal childhood over the advancement of medical science. And it's about an elderly man who continues to maintain that decision decades later, despite the pleas of researchers and the potential benefits to humanity. What do you think happened with the Murphy brothers? Do you believe their blood types represent a genuine genetic anomaly that science has yet to explain? Or do you think there's a more conventional explanation that we're missing? Drop your theories in the comments below. The medical community continues to hope that someday, perhaps after Liam Murphy's passing, tissue samples or genetic material might become available for study through estate provisions or family consent. Some researchers have even suggested that preserved blood samples from the original 1952 tests might still exist somewhere in hospital archives, though extensive searches have failed to locate any such specimens. The possibility remains that modern DNA analysis could be applied to historical samples if they could be found. But for now, the Murphy case remains in limbo. It exists in the scientific literature as a footnote, an anomaly, a case that challenges our assumptions but provides no answers. It's discussed in genetics courses as an example of the limitations of our knowledge and the importance of humility in scientific inquiry. It's cited in ethics courses as a case study in balancing research interests against individual rights. And it continues to fascinate anyone who encounters it, because it represents something we rarely acknowledge in modern science, a mystery that may never be solved. The four Murphy brothers lived ordinary lives. They grew up, found work, started families, and eventually passed away. 3 of them are now gone. 1 remains, carrying with him the last living evidence of a genetic puzzle that has confounded science for over 70 years. When Liam Murphy dies, whatever biological secret his family carried will die with him unless he chooses to change his mind in his final years. There's a certain poetry to that outcome, even if it frustrates researchers. In an age where we sequence genomes, edit genes, and push the boundaries of biological possibility, the Murphy brothers remind us that some mysteries remain beyond our reach. Not because we lack the technology to solve them, but because the people at the center of those mysteries have the right to say no. They have the right to be more than subjects of scientific curiosity. They have the right to be human beings who control their own bodies and their own stories. The Murphy case challenges us to think about what we're entitled to know and what remains private even when it could benefit humanity. It forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about consent, about the value of scientific knowledge versus personal autonomy, and about whether there are some mysteries that deserve to remain unsolved if solving them requires violating someone's fundamental rights. Science refuses to study the Murphy brothers not because researchers don't want to, but because they cannot. The family said no, and in the end, that no carries more weight than any potential breakthrough in genetics. It's a reminder that for all our technological advancement and scientific achievement, we still live in a world where individuals have the power to withhold themselves from scrutiny, to maintain their privacy, and to take their secrets to the grave. Today, Liam Murphy remains the last keeper of his family's genetic mystery. Whether he carries a unique mutation, an undocumented form of chimerism, or simply represents an extreme statistical anomaly that has been misunderstood for decades, we may never know. The medical community continues to hope. Researchers continue to publish papers analyzing the historical data. And somewhere in Ireland, an 82-year-old man lives his life, aware that he holds answers to questions that have puzzled scientists for 7 decades, but under no obligation to share them. If this case intrigued you, make sure to subscribe to True Crime Vault for more investigations into the unexplained and the mysterious. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts on whether Liam Murphy should participate in genetic testing, or whether his right to privacy is more important than scientific discovery. And remember, these aren't just scientific puzzles. These are real people, real lives, and real decisions about autonomy and dignity that deserve to be respected. This is True Crime Vault, unlocking the cases that deserve to be remembered.